Hey, sleepy heads. Welcome to the vintage game of sleep, where forgotten empires whisper in your dreams, and the past plays games with fate. Tonight's question drifts from the deepest corners of imagination. What if Squid Game happened during the Roman Empire? But before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it? Okay, close your eyes now. Breathe slowly, and let the story begin. In a quiet corner of the empire far from Caesar's reach, where the dust never settled and time moved like syrup, there stood a village without a name. No banners, no temples, no soldiers. Just the steady hum of existence and the creaking of a lonely wooden tavern that swayed slightly with the wind. Inside, Cassian sat alone. A traveler, mid-30s, cloaked, eyes the color of burnt amber. The kind of man who had seen more wars than weddings, but still smiled when the fire was warm enough. His hand wrapped around a simple clay cup, untouched. The tavern around him was nearly empty, just a few locals hunched over bread and watered wine, too tired to be curious. But something in the air was changing. Like the moment just before thunder, when the clouds stopped moving and everything... Wait. Cassian felt it. A door creaked behind him. Not the tavern door. No, something smaller. A trapdoor behind the bar slowly opened, and from it emerged an old man with skin like parchment and robes that shimmered like old oil lamps. He held a scroll, bound in red thread, sealed with wax so black it looked wet. The man did not speak. He walked to Cassian, leaned in, and placed the scroll on the table, then vanished back beneath the floor. Cassian blinked once. The scroll had no writing. Just a symbol stamped into the wax. The triangle, the circle, and the dot. He'd seen it before. In a dream. On a shield long ago? Or was it carved into that ruin he found as a boy? His heart knew it before his mind did. He was being summoned. Outside the tavern, the wind picked up. A horse neighed in the distance, though no stables were nearby. Somewhere far off, a bell rang 3 times. Cassian untied the scroll. Inside, a map. Not of places, not entirely. It was more like a pathway, a series of turns, hills, shadows, symbols, a red X burned into the end. At the top of the scroll, etched faintly in Latin, only those who have nothing left to lose may find everything. Cassian rose, left coins on the table, though no one had served him, and stepped out into the mist. The night air was cold and silent. The stars above were dull, as if they too had been watching, waiting. He walked the path shown on the scroll, past farms long abandoned, past the remains of a road swallowed by vines, past a marble statue missing its head, arms, and name. And there, where 3 olive trees leaned in like old conspirators, he found the marker. A small, perfect circle of stone, smooth, embedded in the dirt. He stepped onto it. The ground shifted, and before him a door of rock opened from the earth. Inside, blackness and the smell of myrrh. A torch lit by itself. Cassian took it and walked in. He walked for hours, or maybe minutes. Time stopped behaving after the second turn. The torch never dimmed. The walls whispered softly in Latin, Greek, and something older. And then the corridor opened into a great chamber of carved obsidian. 24 robed figures stood silently inside. Each held a mask. Some round, some square, some with triangles. No eyes, no mouths, just shapes. Cassian joined them. A voice echoed from the walls. This is the beginning. Your name is gone. Your memory will follow. And if you survive, you will wake richer than an emperor. Step forward, choose your face. Cassian's feet moved without effort. He picked up the mask shaped like a circle, smooth and cold. He placed it over his face. And the world went dark. Darkness. Not the kind that blinds, but the kind that listens. Cassian's breath was the only sound, slow, muffled by the mask. The circle mask fit tightly, pressing just beneath his cheekbones. It smelled faintly of oil and old parchment, like it had been worn before. The ground beneath him shifted, not in motion, but in memory. Stone turned to sand, then back again. The torchlight vanished. Yet somehow he still saw. Ahead, a narrow path lit by blue fire, floating torches that burned without smoke, without wood. They hovered in the air like lost stars. Cassian walked forward, boots echoing against the polished black floor. He could hear the other players too, some walking just ahead, others behind. No one spoke. Their names were gone. Their stories paused. At the end of the hall stood a massive bronze gate, flanked by 2 stone statues. Gladiators, carved in mid-strike, eyes hollow, weapons raised but never swung. As Cassian approached, the torches behind him extinguished, one by one, until only the gate remained. It opened without sound. Inside, a vast circular chamber, its domed ceiling disappearing into shadow. Around the edge, 24 stone pillars, each with a flame that never flickered. And in the center, a single raised platform like the center of an arena. Upon it, an altar of marble, blank except for a single item placed in its center, a small silver coin. Cassian approached slowly. He wasn't the first. Several masked figures stood around the platform, already waiting, watching, unmoving, like statues in robes. The same voice from earlier returned, but now it felt closer, like it was inside his thoughts. This is the token. You will each receive one. It is your key, your vote, your memory. Lose it, and you are forgotten. Give it, and you are changed. Cassian reached out. His fingers brushed the silver. Cold, heavier than it looked. He picked it up. On one side, the symbol again. On the other, 2 figures carved in fine relief. One held a dagger. The other held out an empty hand. Between them, a flame. Cassian clenched the coin in his fist and stepped back. The others followed. One by one, each player retrieved their token. Once all 24 had one, the altar sank slowly into the floor. And the flame atop each stone pillar flared bright red for a moment, then dimmed to gold. The voice spoke once more. Now, choose your space. Along the edge of the chamber, beneath each pillar, a stone bed slid out from the wall. Simple, hard, no blankets, no fire. Cassian found one and sat down. A symbol was carved into the wall above it. 9, Roman numeral 9. He ran his hand across it. The stone felt smooth, but warm, like it had been recently touched. Perhaps by someone who had not left. The chamber began to darken slowly. The flames didn't extinguish, they simply faded, as though drawing the night inward. Cassian lay back on the stone slab. No dreams came, but he heard things. Soft metal scraping, a sigh, a whisper, a coin spinning. He didn't move. He didn't speak. And then a bell rang once. Low, long. The sound echoed through the chamber like a breath held too long. The flame above his bed blinked once, then steadied. Cassian opened his eyes. In the center of the room now stood a new figure. Tall, hooded, robed in deep red, face covered by a mask with 3 lines across it, 1 vertical, 2 horizontal. No eyes, no mouth. The figure raised a long wooden staff, tapped it once on the stone. Boom. The game begins at dawn. Tonight you sleep as strangers. Tomorrow you wake as pieces. The figure turned, vanished into the shadows. Cassian's eyes followed the place where he had stood. The others were already lying down, some trembling, some still as death. He clutched the coin in his palm and placed it beneath his neck, a pillow made of metal and meaning. Somewhere far above, the moon passed silently over the dome, and the chamber fell back into silence. Somewhere between breath and dream, Cassian stirred. There was no sun, yet the room had changed. The golden torchlight was now a dusky violet, casting long, unreal shadows across the stone floor. The air felt thicker, like the chamber itself had exhaled during the night. Cassian sat up slowly. The silver coin still lay beneath his head, warm, as though it had pulsed with heat through the hours. Around the room, the others were waking too. 23 players. Masks back on. No talking. Only movement. A soft rumble echoed through the stone. The pillar flames flickered once, then all extinguished at once, plunging the chamber into a hush so deep it made Cassian's bones tense. Then, a glow emerged. From the far end of the chamber, a door opened not outward, but downward, sliding silently into the floor. Beyond it, a staircase, spiraling into a red-lit abyss. The voice returned, but now it whispered close, just beside the ear. Trial 1 awaits. Follow the flame. Cassian joined the line as the players moved. No one rushed, no one dared hesitate. Down they went, step by step. Torchlight deepened to crimson. Walls around them changed from marble to something older, like bone carved from mountain. Symbols lined the walls now, not letters, not numbers. Games. Drawings of dice, of hands extended, of blades in cups, of ropes, of scales, of coins in bowls. Dozens of ancient games, all blurred into ritual. Cassian ran his fingers along one symbol, a square carved with a line through its center. It vibrated slightly beneath his touch, then vanished. The stairs ended at a massive stone archway. Above it, a phrase was carved in Latin. One object, one choice, one fate. The voice returned. Trial 1, the objects of fate. Each of you will step forward, alone. You will choose an object from the altar. Some bring protection, some bring peril. The game begins, not with what you do, but what you choose. Step forward, player 9. Cassian froze. That was him. He moved forward. The others faded into the shadows behind him. The room opened into a circular arena, small, silent, surrounded by high, dark stone walls. In the center sat a stone pedestal with 12 objects spread atop it. No sound but breath. No instruction but instinct. The voice gave no clues. Just waited. Cassian stepped up to the altar. His eyes scanned the objects. A black feather, a small dagger, a wooden mask, a bone coin, a silver cup, a glass bead, a red ribbon, a broken ring, a roll of dice, a sealed scroll, a stone with blood on it, a golden eye. Each pulsed faintly, as if alive. Cassian's hand hovered above them. His fingers pulled toward the silver cup. He didn't know why, but his body chose before his mind agreed. He lifted it. It was empty, light as a whisper. The moment he touched it, the others behind the wall began to choose. One by one, names were called. Objects taken. No one returned through the door. Each vanished behind the altar after their choice. Then silence. Then the voice. You have chosen. Let the meaning follow. Cassian was led through a narrow tunnel. The walls now shimmered faintly, like obsidian laced with memories. At the end of the corridor, a chamber opened. 12 players stood inside, each holding their object, each surrounded by a faint glow, some red, some blue, some white. Cassian looked down at his silver cup. It glowed, white. A figure entered robed, masked in red. It pointed to the players glowing red. 4 of them. Without a word, they were led to the side wall. Another door opened behind them. They did not return. The voice. Not all objects protect. Not all players continue. Those who chose red have ended. Cassian clutched the silver cup tighter. He did not know what it meant, but it had spared him, at least for now. The chamber dimmed. Another door opened. The rest of the players, those with blue or white glows, were led into a new corridor. The path beneath them now shifted soft beneath the feet, like crushed ash. Cassian walked, the silver cup at his side, the coin still tucked beneath his cloak. He did not speak, but the feeling in his chest grew heavier. He was not in a game. He was in something older than games, and it had only just begun. The corridor ahead narrowed again, not by design, but by pressure, as if the very stone around Cassian was tightening, breathing slower, darker, heavier. He and the others walked in silence. The path beneath their feet shifted from ash to woven cloth, smooth and unnatural. Every footstep made less and less sound. Even their breathing began to fade, like the air didn't want to carry it. Then, after a turn in the stone, they entered a new chamber. It was a hall, long and rectangular, with high black walls that arched at the ceiling. On either side were bronze masks mounted on the walls, expressionless, open-mouthed, staring forever forward. At the far end, an elevated platform with no stairs. And in the center of the room, a wide tile floor with an intricate pattern of red and black squares. On each square, a faint symbol. Daggers, eyes, crescents, serpents. Some tiles were blank. Some pulsed slightly with blue light, like they were listening. Cassian and the other players stepped in slowly. The voice came again now, just above a whisper. Trial 2, the silent arena. The rules are simple. The path must be crossed. No words, no sound, no breath above a whisper. Make noise, and you awaken the watchers. Cassian glanced at the bronze masks. One of them had already turned slightly, though no one had touched it. You must pass together. But not all will reach the end. A low tone echoed through the room, a note like a plucked string. The floor beneath them hummed softly. The trial had begun. Cassian took his first step onto a black tile marked with a crescent. It didn't make a sound. He took another, a red tile, blank, still silent. Behind him a player stepped on a tile marked with a serpent. And the air hissed. A soft sound, but enough. One of the bronze masks turned fully. Its eyes flashed red. And without movement, the player froze mid-step, then dropped silently to the ground as if life had simply been removed from him, like a candle snuffed in sleep. Cassian didn't look back. The remaining players moved slowly, carefully, choosing their tiles with instinct more than reason. Cassian began to notice something. Only blank tiles. And crescent tiles made no sound. The others' eye, dagger, serpent all seemed to carry risks. He adjusted his path, slower now. Breath barely in his throat. Even the sound of fabric brushing could be fatal. Another player to his left stepped on an eye tile. No noise. But the bronze mask beside him began to drip a dark fluid like melted wax. He took another step. A soft breath escaped his lips. That was all. A small puff. The entire wall of masks turned in unison. The player vanished in a flash of red, not falling, not breaking, just erased. Gone. Cassian reached the midpoint of the arena. 8 remained now. They formed an unspoken line fanned out across the floor. He looked ahead. The final rows of tiles had fewer blanks. One red tile pulsed softly in front of him. No markings, just glow. Cassian stepped on it. The tile sank slightly, and suddenly the platform at the end of the room lowered into the ground, revealing a hidden staircase. The voice returned. A path has been revealed. Those who remain may proceed. The players rushed now quietly but urgently toward the open path. Only 6 made it. Cassian turned one last time before stepping down. The bronze masks on the walls were all looking toward the exit now. They didn't follow, but they watched. And somewhere, just beneath the sound of his own heart, Cassian could have sworn he heard them whispering. Not words, but names. The staircase below led to a chamber dimly lit by floating golden orbs. No trial, no voice. Just sleep mats on stone and a bowl at the center of the room. Inside it, 6 black stones, each slightly warm to the touch. Cassian picked one up. It pulsed once, and then dimmed. Another player, tall, masked with a square, dropped his stone without looking. Another dropped to his knees. The silence here wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that followed survival. And everyone here knew it would not last. Cassian sat in the far corner, back against the wall. He did not sleep. He clutched the silver coin in one hand and the black stone in the other, and listened to the others breathe, like a tide that could vanish at any moment. The torches dimmed again, not extinguished, just quieter, as if the very flames themselves were holding their breath. Cassian sat against the cold stone wall, the black stone warm in his palm, the silver coin tucked near his ribs. He didn't sleep. No one truly did anymore. Only 6 remained. Each one wore their mask still, but in this silence they had begun to understand something vital. They were not strangers anymore. They were survivors, and in the next trial, one of them would not be. Without sound, a doorway opened. The light behind it flickered between amber and red. Each flame, a breath, each flicker, a heartbeat. The voice returned, low and even now. Trial 3, the Tower of Sacrifice. One may rise, but one must fall. Each of you will ascend alone until a choice is made. At the summit, there is only space for one. Cassian stood. The others followed silent, weary, watching each other. They entered a spiral tower, smooth marble, with steps carved along the inner wall, no railing, no torches, just a narrow window slit every few feet, letting in thin grey light. Each step creaked like it had waited centuries for weight. The 6 players began to climb. Cassian counted his breaths, counted the windows. Each turn higher felt thinner, harder, like gravity was being negotiated. No one spoke, but the tension began to drip like water from a crack in the ceiling. Halfway up, the steps began to narrow wide enough now for only 1 foot. Cassian slowed, and so did everyone behind him. He glanced over his shoulder. The masked player behind him, tall, wide-shouldered, with a dagger symbol on his tunic, did not stop moving. Their eyes met briefly. No words. But Cassian felt it. The pressure. A hand suddenly touched his back. Cassian turned. The tall player backed off just slightly, pretended to study the wall. Cassian kept climbing. Higher. The tower grew colder now. The windows vanished. The steps turned into slabs, then ladders carved from stone. Then a chamber. Small, circular, open to the sky above. A fire burned in a metal basin at the center. 5 others stood inside, panting, silent, anxious. Cassian stepped in last. The voice returned. Only one may ascend. To go higher, another must be chosen. To stop climbing. If none decide, the fire will choose. A square panel rose near the fire. Upon it, 6 indentations. Cassian stepped forward. His silver coin began to warm. Without instruction, they understood. Each player placed their coin into one of the grooves. They clicked into place, but nothing happened. The fire flared suddenly, then pulsed, and then the panel began to glow red beneath one coin. Cassian's. The room froze. The fire chooses player 9. Now, player 9 must choose another. One to carry upward. one to remain behind. Cassian's hands trembled. He looked around. The others didn't move. But one player, the shortest among them, thin and masked with a triangle, stepped forward just half a pace. He raised his hand, not in protest, not in surrender, but in permission. Cassian blinked. He saw something in that gesture. A memory, a reflection, or maybe just a crack in the mask. He stepped beside the triangle-masked player, placed a hand on his shoulder. The others watched, silent. The platform beneath them shifted. A soft glow surrounded the two of them, Cassian and the Chosen. Decision accepted. One rises, one stays. The floor split open, slowly revealing a staircase upward, only wide enough for one. Cassian turned to look back, and the triangle-masked player sat beside the fire. Did not move. Did not resist. Cassian nodded, then ascended. The final steps were steep, each one heavier than the last. At the top, a chamber with no roof, just open stars above, and a single item resting on a stone table. A black cube, smooth, heavy, no markings. Cassian reached out. When he touched it, he saw flashes. Images in light. A hand holding a dagger, a crowd cheering, his own face reflected in water, a silver coin spinning, the mask cracking. Then, silence. The cube vanished, and a new voice spoke. Not the one from before, but his own. You chose him, because he reminded you of someone. You climbed, but part of you stayed behind. You're not playing a game, Cassian. You're replaying a truth. The stars above shifted. Cassian's vision blurred. He stumbled backward and fell into darkness, falling, but not downward. Cassian's body was still. Yet his mind fell through layers of sound, of stone, of something older. And then, stillness. He awoke on cold marble. No stars above now, just a massive ceiling, painted with symbols that shifted gently, like smoke on water. He blinked once. The silver coin was still with him, but the black cube was gone. Around him the room glowed in amber light. He was alone again. At least, he thought so. A sound, soft, subtle, familiar. Breathing. He turned. 5 others stood nearby, all masked, all silent. The same 5 that survived the trials. But something was different. Their masks had changed, slightly. Cassian's circular mask now held a thin crack across the middle, barely visible, like a fracture in a mirror. He reached up to touch it. It felt warm, like skin. A bell rang once, but this time it didn't echo. Instead, a door opened at the far end of the chamber, and a new figure entered. Not masked, not robed, but dressed like a Roman nobleman with gold trim, deep purple tunic, and eyes like slate. He walked calmly to the center of the chamber. Behind him, 4 armored guards in masks. No faces, just gold plates where identity once was. The nobleman spoke. You are no longer strangers. You are no longer names. You are now pieces on the board. He gestured to the wall behind him. A massive stone game board revealed itself, carved with paths, towers, arenas, mazes. Tiny silver tokens glinted in the torchlight. Cassian's heart sank. There were hundreds of tokens already on the board, many faded, some broken. Only a few were shining brightly. The nobleman turned back to them. You've completed the first phase. You've proven you can choose, that you can lose, that you can sacrifice. But now, the real game begins. The floor beneath them shifted, rising slowly. They ascended through a stone tunnel straight upward until light bled through cracks above. Then, they emerged into a coliseum. Empty seats, no crowd, but the sky was open, pale pink, early morning. And in the center, a circle drawn in blood. 6 stones placed evenly within it. The voice, not the nobleman, but the original voice returned. This is where you see each other. This is where alliances form and fracture. This is the first morning. And it will be your last, if you forget what you've become. Cassian looked to his left. The masked player who had sat beside him in silence the night before, tall, fast, smart. Cassian nodded slightly. The man didn't nod back, but he didn't turn away either. A beginning. The sun crested the wall of the arena. A warm light brushed the edge of Cassian's mask. He felt tired, deeply tired. Not from climbing, not from choosing, but from carrying the weight of not knowing who ran this, why it began, and what waited at the end. And deep inside, a colder question stirred. What if there wasn't an end? What if this was the world now? And everything outside was the dream? The voice returned, quieter now. Sleep while you can, players. Because tonight, the second game begins. Cassian sat down inside the circle, cross-legged, still. The silver coin in his hand. The sky above slowly fading from pink to gold. And just before he closed his eyes, he thought he heard something. A child's laugh. Far off. Faint. Maybe memory. Maybe a warning. The light was soft, too soft to be morning. It drifted like fog, not sunlight. Cassian stirred on the cold stone, the circle of blood beneath him now faded, dried. He sat up slowly, silver coin still clutched in his fist. The arena was empty. The other players had vanished. Or maybe he had. Above him, the Roman sky had turned strange, still blue, but too still, like the clouds had forgotten how to move. He stood. There were no gates, no doors. Only one thing had changed. A scroll, placed gently at his feet, tied with deep green twine, sealed with the same black wax. Cassian crouched. He broke the seal and opened it. It wasn't a letter. It was a map, but not of cities or roads. It was drawn in ink and ash, the paper weathered, edges burnt. Lines curved and coiled like rivers, but where they should have named provinces, the map held emotions. Regret, pride, sacrifice, silence, betrayal, belonging. At the center of the map, a marking in gold leaf, the place where the game was born. Cassian traced it with his finger. The paper vibrated faintly. He looked around, still no one, no voice. Only wind now, dry and warm. But when he looked again, the map had changed. Now it showed a path beneath the arena. A glowing red thread traced through underground tunnels, spiraling deep into a part labeled simply, The Hollow. And beside it, etched in fine crimson ink, only those who know they are pieces may become players. He folded the map, tucked it into the folds of his cloak, and then the arena began to sink. Not crumble, not shake. Sink like a colosseum melting into the earth, each stone block folding inward, pulled by invisible hands. Cassian did not run. He stood in the center as the stone beneath him slowly descended, forming a new chamber around him. Dark, circular, wet, ancient. At the far wall, a door. Not a Roman door. Not even mortal. It shimmered like liquid, framed by stone that pulsed like skin. Cassian stepped forward. His silver coin glowed softly in his pocket. The door opened. Inside, a hallway lined with mirrors. But none showed him. Each reflected a different version of himself. Younger, older, in battle, in chains, laughing, screaming, praying, failing. 24 reflections, one for each player. He stepped past them slowly. Only the final mirror showed now Cassian as he was, wearing the cracked circle mask, and standing in a room filled with masks staring back at him. Behind that mirror, a small chamber. Inside, a table, and seated at it, someone familiar. The triangle masked player. The one he had left behind. But he wasn't wearing the mask now. His face was kind, tired, wiser. He looked up at Cassian and smiled. "You came," he said. Cassian's mouth was dry. He hadn't heard his own name in days. "Where are we?" Cassian asked. The man gestured to the wall where the map now floated, glowing softly. "We are in the place between games," he said. "The rules don't live here, only choices." Cassian sat. The two men stared at one another for a moment. Then the triangle masked player leaned in. "You think you're playing the game, but it's been watching you since the first time you refused to sleep." Cassian looked down. His coin had started to spin on its own atop the table. "The next trial," the man said, "won't test your silence, or your courage, or your body. It'll test the one thing they think they already broke. Your memory." Cassian frowned. But before he could ask, the room went black. And the voice returned, cold, final. "Trial 4 begins. Welcome to the marble chamber." Cassian blinked, but there was no light, only the sound of breath. Not his. Others. Many. He stood in complete blackness, but the air shimmered. Each breath around him echoed strangely, like it had to push through water or fog before reaching his ears. Then torches lit in a perfect circle around him. 12 in all, blue flame, no smoke, no warmth. The chamber was vast and polished white pure marble from wall to ceiling to floor. The surface was so smooth that Cassian's own footsteps returned like whispers. In the center, a single stone chair. Facing away. The voice spoke again. But now, it sounded like his own voice. Trial 4, the Mask of Memory. You think the game is about survival. But before you can survive, you must remember why you're here. Sit. Cassian hesitated, but his feet moved forward. The closer he got to the chair, the more the marble around him seemed to change from perfect smoothness to small cracks and scratches, like history had passed through recently. When he reached the chair, it turned on its own. Seated in it himself. Not exactly. A version of him. Younger, sharper eyes. No mask, no coin. Just Cassian, the way he was before. Before what? Cassian wasn't sure. The figure stood up, didn't speak. Just walked around him and placed a new mask on the table between them. This one wasn't simple. It was a mirror. Highly polished silver, shaped to fit the face but reflected only memory. Cassian stared into it and saw not the room, but a field of wheat. Wind, birds' laughter, a girl's voice, a boy's hand, running. Home. Then a shadow, a scream. Blood. The mask pulsed once. Cassian stepped back. You must wear it, said the younger version of himself, if you want to leave. Cassian reached for the mask. It was warm. When he lifted it to his face, the room feed. Now he stood in a marketplace, long gone. Children running. Fruits laid out on blankets. He turned his head and saw himself again. Younger. Arguing with someone. An older man, a merchant. Then a soldier appeared, shouting. Cassian's hand reached instinctively toward his belt. No weapon. The soldier struck the merchant. Cassian did nothing. He watched, and then walked away. The scene flickered. A voice whispered, "You survived, but left others to bleed." The mask grew colder. Now another memory. A campfire, a unit of men. Cassian's fellow soldiers laughed, passed around bread and cheap wine. Then a command arrived. One soldier would be sent ahead a suicide path. They drew tokens. Cassian had drawn the losing one. but he traded it quietly while the others were distracted. Another man went in his place. He didn't come back. The chamber darkened again. Cassian dropped to one knee. The silver coin in his cloak grew heavy. As if judging him, the voice returned, now gentler. You do not wear the mask to hide. You wear it to remember who you were before the game. And decide if that man still belongs here. Cassian looked down. The mirrored mask cracked, not broken, but fractured like his past. He reached up and removed it. And once again, the chamber was marble, white, still, cold. The younger version of himself was gone. But now standing across the room were the 5 other players, each holding a cracked mirror mask, each looking at him. No one said a word, but one of them stepped forward. A tall man. He held out a hand. Cassian took it. And in that moment, he felt something shift. For the first time, he was not alone. The marble chamber faded into ash. The torchlight dimmed. The floor changed again from polished stone to cracked granite tiles, worn by centuries of weight. Cassian blinked, adjusting to the shift. He stood now on a narrow bridge, suspended over blackness. No walls, no sky, just endless echoing void. Beside him, the 5 remaining players. None spoke. Each wore their cracked, mirrored masks around their necks now, like unwanted medals. Ahead, a stone pillar. And at its base, chains. 3 pairs, iron, long enough to move a little, but never far. The voice returned. This time, with certainty. Trial 5, the chain and the choice. 3 pairs, 1 path. Only 1 pair will reach the door. You must move forward together. You must decide who will lead and who will follow. But when the path ends, you will face the test. One may walk free, the other must unchain them. Cassian stepped forward as the others hesitated. The tall man from before, the one who offered his hand, stepped beside him. No words, just understanding. They locked chains around their wrists. Cold iron, final click. Now they were pair 1. The other 4 players quickly formed the 2 remaining pairs. The platform ahead shimmered, then expanded into a twisting, narrow corridor of floating stones, some cracked, some flickering in and out of reality. The voice again. You must choose your steps. Only those who walk in rhythm will survive. Cassian and his partner began. The chain between them pulled tight with every step. 2 fast and 1 stumbles. 2 slow and both fall. Stone by stone, they crossed the corridor. Some tiles crumbled the moment they touched them. Others shifted underfoot, testing their balance. They moved silently, steadily. Behind them, the second pair misjudged a rhythm. A platform tilted sharply. A scream was swallowed by the dark. Only one of them remained. But the chain had snapped. She sat frozen, alone, waiting. The path had judged. Cassian and his partner kept moving. Soon they reached a wider platform, circular and flat. At its center, 2 stone chairs facing each other. Between them, a glowing blade and a glowing key. The voice echoed around them. One of you must choose the key. One of you must choose the blade. The one who takes the key walks free. The one who takes the blade must cut the chain. Cutting the chain does not promise survival, but it does complete the trial. Cassian looked at the man across from him. They were both breathing hard, but the silence between them wasn't empty. It was mutual. He reached forward, picked up the blade. The man across from him, without hesitation, took the key. He bowed his head once. Cassian nodded. Then, with a deep breath, he raised the blade. It wasn't sharp, but it cut anyway. The chain snapped with a burst of red light, not blood, but something deeper, like regret turned into fire. The man stood, The path ahead lit up a stone doorway rising into view. He walked forward, didn't look back. Cassian remained, alone, holding the blade. The voice returned soft now, almost like comfort. You chose sacrifice. But you are not forgotten. The game watches. The path behind him disappeared. Only one step remained forward. Cassian took it. The doorway closed behind him. The air grew colder. The flame in his chest steadier. The next chamber was silent. No other players, no trial yet. Just a stone wall carved with names, some in Latin, some in symbols, some erased. His name was not yet carved, but a space had been left, waiting. The stone wall behind him closed with a soft shh, like a page turning. Cassian found himself in total silence. No voice, no footsteps, no breeze. Even his breath seemed to vanish before reaching his ears. Then a whisper. Just one. Why didn't you come back for me? Cassian turned. The room had changed. Now it was a long corridor, lit with pale light leaking through cracks in the ceiling. But the corridor had no doors, no windows. Just mirrors on both sides. Not glass, not reflections. Living memory. In the mirror beside him a boy. 10 years old, dirty face, bare feet. Running behind Cassian, shouting. Cassian did not stop. The image froze. The voice repeated, "Why didn't you come back for me?" The corridor demanded no answer. But still, Cassian whispered, "I couldn't." He moved forward. Another mirror. A battlefield. Rain falling. Cassian older standing beside two wounded soldiers. Only one could be carried. He chose. He walked away. The one he left behind shouted after him, "You said I was your brother." The same rain fell in the real corridor. Wet stone now slick beneath Cassian's boots. He didn't stop walking. The corridor bent not left or right but inward, as if it was folding around his thoughts. More voices came. From mirrors, from cracks in the walls, from inside his own chest. You only help when someone's watching. You wanted the coin more than the cause. You survived everything, except yourself. Each voice wore a different tone, some angry, some disappointed, one just tired. But then one voice broke through them all. Cassian. It was soft, female, familiar. He stopped. The mirror to his left began to glow. He stepped toward it. A small room appeared, simple. A table. A woman sat at it, head down, dark hair falling around her face. She stirred a bowl of lentils. Steam curled upward. Familiar. Cassian's hand rose slowly. She looked up and smiled. You never got to say goodbye, the voice whispered beside him. But you can now. Cassian reached out to touch the mirror, but it didn't let him through. Only a single phrase appeared beneath the image. This is the memory that holds you here. The woman smiled again, then faded. The corridor was empty once more. A bell rang, once, twice, then silence. Cassian reached the far end of the corridor. A final wall stood in his way, solid black. But carved into it were dozens of names. Some real, some etched in symbols, all faint. As if fading with time, one space was open. Cassian leaned in. His name began to etch itself slowly into the stone. Cassian Player 9. Beneath it, a word formed in red light. Listened. The wall dissolved. Cassian stepped into a round chamber. This one was warm. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, he felt warmth. A small hearth fire glowed at the far side. No trials, no players, no voice. Just quiet. Not silence. Quiet. The kind that allows space to breathe. Cassian sat down, closed his eyes. The last voice echoed in his mind again. You never got to say goodbye. and softly, like a memory soothing itself to sleep, he whispered, "Goodbye." The warmth of the hearth faded. Cassian didn't feel it leave, only noticed the moment it was gone. When he opened his eyes, the chamber had shifted. Now a stone circle, wide and dimly lit from above, like the inside of a gladiator's dome. No flames. Just flickering light falling from a strange, unseen source. He stood. 5 others stood with him. The same survivors. The same cracked masks. Only now, they were unmasked. For the first time, Cassian saw their eyes. Tired, watchful, full of weight. A voice returned, but not the one from before. It was many voices, woven together like rope. Trial 6, the circle of truth. You fought, chosen, sacrificed. Now you speak. Each of you will answer one question. If your answer is false, you disappear. The players glanced at one another. Cassian shifted slightly, arms loose by his sides. A stone pedestal rose at the center of the circle. On it, a black flame. No heat, no smoke, just darkness burning upward. The voice whispered, "One by one, step forward." The first player moved, a woman with a sharp jawline and a hollow gaze. She stood before the flame. The question came, "Did you lie to survive the second trial?" She hesitated, then nodded once. Yes. The flame flared, then shrank. She was allowed to step back. The second player, tall, muscular, a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. "Did you cause another's death for personal gain?" He looked down, then straight at the others. "Yes." The flame flickered. He remained. Cassian was next. He felt every step like it cost something ancient. He stood before the black fire. The voice asked, "Do you still believe you are the hero of your story?" He blinked. No breath. No movement behind him. Just that question, pulsing in the dark. He swallowed, then said, "No." The flame pulsed, then dimmed again. He stepped back. The trial continued. Each answer stripped another layer. One player disappeared, not from lying, but from believing their lie. They said, "I never betrayed anyone." But the flame knew. They vanished in silence. No scream, no flash. Just gone. Now only 4 remained. The final question came, but this time it wasn't directed at one person. It was for all of them. The voice changed again, now clear, sharp, almost human. "You are down to 4. Only 3 seats exist at the next gate. The trial is done. Now, choose. One must be left behind." Silence. Then breathing. Then shifting. Cassian looked to his right. The woman stared at the ground. The tall man scratched at his arm. The fourth, a quiet, hooded figure, stepped forward. And without warning spoke, "I'll stay." The others froze. He placed his coin on the pedestal beside the fire. The flame consumed it without smoke, without resistance. He nodded at Cassian once, then disappeared into a side corridor. No guard, no voice, no chain, just choice. The flame died out. The pedestal sank. The ground trembled gently. A gate opened in the far wall. Cassian and the 2 others stepped through. On the other side, not a chamber, not a room, but a field. Endless grass, stars above, soft wind, and 3 stone markers standing in the earth, each with one word. His read, "Awakened." Cassian sat in the grass. For the first time since the game began, he didn't feel watched. And for a moment, he thought he could sleep. The field whispered, not with voices, but with old wind, the kind that had passed over battlefields, deserts, and forgotten graves, the kind that remembered things men tried to forget. Cassian lay in the grass, coin still warm in his palm. The other two sat in silence nearby. No one spoke, not out of fear, but reverence. They had survived the truth. They had chosen. And yet, the game wasn't over. From the edge of the field, a new path unfolded. Not a road. Just stones, flat, weathered, spaced unevenly across the grass. Each one bore a single name. Cassian walked past the first, then the next, and the next. Names he recognized. Not from the game, but from life, from war, from mistakes, from loss. Livius, Varlan, Caius, Thorn. Some names made him flinch, others made him pause. The last stone simply said, Cassian, final marker unknown. He stepped over it, and ahead stood the gate without a name. It wasn't gold or stone. It was made of light and ash, shaped by something invisible. The space beyond shimmered like heat over sand. No voice guided him now. No mask watched from above. Just the silence before something begins. Or ends. He looked back once. The two others remained seated, watching him, but not following. Cassian stepped forward. And the moment his foot crossed the invisible threshold, the world shifted. A chamber appeared. Circular, but not crafted. It looked like it had been carved by time itself, smoothed by wind, cracked by silence, polished by sorrow. And in the center, a mirror. Not silver, not glass, just water, still, suspended vertically in the air. Cassian approached. When he looked in, he saw himself, but not the man he was. The man he had tried to hide. The one before the game. Before the lies. Before the masks. He reached forward, touched the water, and the voice returned, soft, old, familiar. You've reached the gate, but gates do not decide. You do. Will you return to a world that forgot you? Or continue into one that remembers? Cassian didn't speak. Instead, he stepped through. The water swallowed him like air. No pain, no light, just a sound, like the wind through tall wheat. And then, stillness. When Cassian opened his eyes, he stood in a place he didn't recognize yet, felt like home. Not the game, not the past, something else. A field with no end, where masks floated in the sky like stars. Each one glowing, watching, waiting, and in his hand no longer a coin, but a key. Black metal, cold, heavy. His name was etched into it, Cassian the Nine, witness. He smiled, just slightly, for the first time in a very, very long time. Then turned, and walked forward. The wind carries no voice tonight. Only the quiet steps of a man walking into the unknown. Cassian. His name now carved into the walls of 1,000 silent chambers, whispered in the corridors of memory. But here, there are no whispers. No breath. No birds. Only stillness. Cassian walked along a bridge of pale white stone. No railings. No sky. Only the faint shimmer of something far beneath, like stars fallen into water. The key in his hand pulsed with a quiet rhythm. Each beat matched the soundless thud of his steps. He didn't ask where he was going. Because here, even questions didn't echo. Then a gate. Not tall, not grand, just present. 2 standing stones leaning inward, carved with thousands of unreadable symbols. As Cassian passed between them, the world changed again. The light dimmed. The stone turned soft beneath his feet. And ahead stretched the kingdom without sound. It was vast, not empty, but full of things that did not move. Statues, hundreds, thousands, of people caught mid-breath, mid-gesture. Some wept, some prayed, some screamed, but no sound had been captured. Only the shape of it. Cassian moved slowly, carefully. Their eyes followed him, not mechanically, but as if memory itself had been watching for his arrival. In the center of the plaza, a small platform. No throne, no crown, just a chair carved from bone-white wood, and above it, suspended by silver threads, a mask. Unlike any before. It had no eye holes, no mouth, just a smooth, flawless surface, as if it was made for one purpose, to remove a man's face and give him silence. Cassian stepped forward. The key in his hand vibrated. He reached upward and touched the mask. Flash. He stood in a palace, but not one built by men. The walls were covered in skin-like fabric, pulsing gently with light. At the far end, a long table. At it sat 3 figures. Masked, not like the others. These were not shapes, not circle, square, or triangle. They were symbols Cassian couldn't comprehend. One tilted its head. Another tapped its finger soundlessly on the table. The third spoke, but the voice entered directly into Cassian's mind. "Welcome, Cassian. You are now in the kingdom without sound. This is where voices die and truth is born. You cannot speak here, only act." Cassian bowed his head slightly. No one returned the gesture. The second figure placed a small sand timer on the table, then turned it over. Grains of black dust began to fall. The voice again. "You have until the last grain falls to complete the next trial. You may not speak, you may not write, but your choices will scream." The mask lowered from above and settled into his hands. It was cold. Cassian placed it over his face. Everything went dark. But in that darkness, a door opened, and a single memory walked through. A child, crying, holding a letter, calling his name. But no one could answer. Not then. Not now. And Cassian stepped forward anyway. Into silence. Into trial. Cassian stepped through the door. The silence was deeper now. Not empty, but heavy. Like sound had been buried, and the air itself had forgotten how to carry it. He wore the faceless mask. It clung to him, not painfully, but with purpose. He could breathe. He could move. But not a single sound followed him. Not even his own heartbeat. The chamber he entered was circular again. But this time, the walls were made of thousands of inscriptions, each carved with a different hand. Some names. Some phrases. Some just scratches. But none were labeled in any known language. It was a room built of unspoken names. In the center, a raised platform. Upon it, 4 other masked players. One stood still, arms folded. One paced, one knelt. The last turned immediately to stare at Cassian, sensing movement more than seeing it. A low vibration pulsed through the floor. Then the sand in the hourglass, the one from the tribunal, appeared mid-air. It had already begun to fall. The trial had started. But no rules were given. No instructions. Just one thing. A small black cube floated to the center of the room. Its sides turned, softly glowing with symbols. And then an image flickered above it. A face. Cassian's, without the mask. And below it, a single line of burning red light. Speak your name without words. The 4 others turned to him. Watching. Waiting. Judging. Cassian stood still. Then he stepped forward, slowly. He knelt before the cube. He touched it once, then again softly, rhythmically. 1 tap, pause, 3 taps, like a beat from an old soldier's march. Then he stepped back and placed a hand on his heart. Lowered his head. One of the players nodded slowly. The cube glowed. The red light faded. Cassian had passed. Without sound, without speech, just presence. The second image appeared. A scroll, torn, ink splattered. Another command, Reveal who you betrayed. The room dimmed. The others turned toward their own parts of the chamber. Each touched different inscriptions on the wall. Softly, gently, as if each mark held a soul. Cassian walked to the far side. He found a name etched poorly, as if carved by shaking hands. Thorn. He traced it, twice, then pressed his forehead to the stone. The cube spun. The light dimmed again. Trial passed. No one disappeared. No one screamed. But something deeper cracked. The fourth image rose. Choose who you would save. This time, the cube didn't glow. Instead, 4 pillars rose around the platform. A 5th remained sunken. Cassian stepped forward, paused, then knelt beside the kneeling player. He placed his hand gently on the man's shoulder. The platform beneath them lit up in silver. The others watched. No one moved to protest. The final pillar began to rise. Cassian had made his choice, and the room accepted it. The hourglass floated higher. Only a few grains of black sand remained. Then the cube revealed a final symbol. A door. And beneath it, etched in gold, to speak again, you must carry their silence. Cassian looked back once at the other players. They stared at him not in anger, but with quiet gratitude. He walked through the door, and as it closed behind him, the silence lifted, gently. Soft footsteps returned, breath returned, but his voice stayed gone. The trial was past, but the price was clear. To speak again, he would have to sacrifice what he learned in silence. Cassian walked, not toward anything, but upward. A staircase spiraled before him, carved from old stone, lined with flickering lights that offered no warmth. The silence from the last trial still clung to him like a shroud he couldn't quite remove. His body ached, but his mind wandered. And above him, endless height. A tower, though he hadn't seen its base, or its top. Each step forward echoed back as a whisper, as if the stones remembered everyone who had come before him. After what felt like an hour, he reached a door. Not grand, not guarded, just old. Its wood was soft from age, and vines grew through the cracks like veins. He pushed it open, and entered the Tower of the Sleeping Ones. The chamber was vast, circular, walls lined with alcoves, and in each one, a body, wrapped in deep blue cloth embroidered with gold thread. Each figure lay perfectly still, not dead, but not alive. Suspended in a dream they never woke from. Cassian walked between them slowly. Dust hung in the air like it was watching. At the center of the tower, a small stone platform. On it, a table. And on the table, a silver bowl filled with black sand, a mask made of glass, and a single candle, unlit. He approached. This time no voice greeted him. Just a phrase carved into the stone beneath the bowl. Light the candle and join them. Leave it dark and know their dreams. Cassian stared at the bowl of sand, at the candle, then at the glass mask. He picked up the mask, held it to the light. Inside it swirled a fog, soft and silver. He saw his own face reflected, and behind it, briefly, the woman from the memory corridor. Her eyes, still waiting. He placed the mask down, took the sand in his hand, and instead of lighting the candle, he poured the sand around it. Slowly, carefully, the flame flickered to life, on its own, but did not burn upward. Instead, it lit inward, glowing from inside the candle like a buried star. The air shifted, and Cassian saw them. Not with his eyes, but with his breath, with his bones. The sleeping ones began to move, not waking, but dreaming louder. He saw flashes, a boy in chains, a queen hiding her tears, a soldier running from his own sword, a mother burying a coin. Their dreams drifted into the air, soundless stories made of light and smoke. And in each one, Cassian saw a piece of himself. Then one dream drifted closer, clearer than the rest. A mountain path. Storms. Cassian kneeling, alone. Beside him, a friend, a player he had once let die. "Why did you leave me behind?" the memory asked. Cassian didn't speak. He only placed his hand to the stone floor and bowed his head. The candle flared one last time, then extinguished. But the dreams remained, glowing gently in the alcoves like stars. The tower had shared its truth, and now it was time to leave. As Cassian stood to go, the glass mask cracked, and inside it appeared a new symbol, a door with no handle. The next path, the final steps of this kingdom. Cassian turned and began to climb again. Cassian climbed in silence. His hands brushed ancient walls. Walls that pulsed, not like stone, like skin, as if the tower itself was alive, breathing around him. The cracked glass mask from the Tower of the Sleeping Ones hung from his belt. Inside it, the symbol of a door with no handle. And after 100 steps, he found it. It wasn't a door at all, just an outline, carved in the shape of an arch, set into the wall like a scar. No lock, no hinges, only an inscription at eye level. "You may enter only if you are remembered." Cassian reached for the stone, but before his hand touched it, the tower whispered, not aloud, but from somewhere within him. A presence. Something he hadn't felt since the corridor of mirrors. A memory he thought had slipped away. The stone beneath his feet cracked softly, and suddenly the chamber transformed. Now he was outside, standing on a dirt path. The sun low and golden, olive trees swaying in the distance, and ahead of him a small stone house. His home, but not now. Not anymore. This was a time before the game, before the mask, before the coin. He stepped forward slowly. His boots made no sound in the dirt, but he knew exactly what came next. A child's voice called out, "Cassian." He turned and saw him. A boy, thin, dust on his face, big eyes full of hope, carrying a stick like a sword. "You promised you'd teach me how to fight today." Cassian, older, broken, silent, tried to answer, but he had no voice. None in this place. The boy approached. He didn't recognize Cassian as himself. To him, Cassian was just a stranger, a shadow. And yet, he trusted him. Handed him the stick. Smiled. Then looked toward the house. "My mother's sick. She says she won't last the winter. But she told me something. She said even the brave ones are afraid. Is that true?" Cassian knelt. He wanted to say yes, to scream it. But still, silence. So instead he reached out and pressed his palm to the boy's chest, right over his heart. The boy smiled again and faded. Cassian stood alone. The olive trees gone. The house crumbled, and the path led back to the door with no handle. But this time it was open. Just a crack. Waiting. He stepped forward. Inside, a single room. Stone walls, one chair, and a mirror. Not glowing, not silver. Just a rough piece of bronze, tarnished by age. Cassian looked into it and saw no one. The reflection was gone. He stared deeper, and then a voice returned, not from the game, not from the tower, but from deep within. "You have remembered enough to be remembered. Step through and carry their names." Room dissolved. Cassian walked through the door into a world of voices, not loud, not harsh, but steady, real. Breath returned. Wind moved. A bird called out the first sound since the kingdom began. Cassian smiled, just barely. The silence had lifted, but he carried it still, like a memory tied around his ribs. Like armor. Cassian stepped onto the stone path. No walls, no torches. Just wind, and a narrow bridge stretching forward into pale fog. Beneath him, nothing but the distant shimmer of broken memories. They rose like mist, half-formed images, unfinished voices, and ahead at the far end of the bridge stood a gate. But it had no hinges, no handle, no seams, only faces carved into it. Dozens of them. Some he remembered, some he had tried to forget. A voice rose from the wind, soft, measured. This is the bridge of forgotten truths. Each step will reveal one. Some will come from you, some from those you left behind. You cannot walk backward. You may not close your eyes. Cassian nodded once and stepped forward. The first stone beneath his boot began to glow. A memory rose like fog from beneath it. A boy, a friend, the same one who once shared a piece of bread during a cold night in the barracks. Cassian, you promised we'd both make it. And then you ran. The stone darkened. He stepped again. The second memory rose. A woman, his commanding officer. Her voice was calm. You lied for me once, and I never said thank you. Now I never will. Cassian looked down. The stones were not just holding memories, they were made of them. Of choices he'd buried. Words he'd swallowed. Another step. A man young, wide-eyed from the early trials. The first player to fall. He had asked Cassian, which path looks safe? Cassian had pointed. The man had trusted him. He hadn't made it 2 steps. Now his voice echoed gently. You didn't lie, but you hoped I would go first. Cassian closed his eyes for just a second, then stepped again. Halfway across the bridge now. And the faces on the distant gate were watching him. Stone eyes, no judgment, just memory. Cassian reached the next step. This time the voice was familiar, his own. Younger, confident, a voice from long before the game. I want to be remembered, even if it costs everything, even if no one knows the truth. The bridge pulsed softly beneath him. The fog quieted. He took another step. The wind blew harder. The next voice shook with rage. You think survival is honor. You think silence is noble. You were given chances, and you hoarded them. Cassian breathed deeply. And you're right. He stepped again. This time the stone beneath him stayed bright, as if it accepted the answer. One final step, only one. The last stone before the gate. Cassian paused. The fog rose again, but now it didn't take a voice. It took a form. A woman. Not anyone from the game. Someone older, worn, gentle eyes. The one from the memory corridor. His mother. She placed her hand on his cheek, and though her touch had no weight, it filled him with the warmth of every lost night. You were always trying to protect something, Cassian. But you forgot. Someone needed to protect you too. And then she was gone. He stepped onto the last stone. The gate in front of him shuddered, and then opened. Not outward, not inward, but upward like a curtain being lifted. Behind it, a stairway, floating, endless, leading into light. Not gold, not white, just soft and like sunrise after years of storm. Cassian turned back once. The bridge behind him had vanished, but the truths remained burned into him like pages from a book no one could read but him. He climbed the stairs, step after step. No voice guided him now, only the beat of his own heart, and the feeling that at last he might understand who he really was. Cassian climbed. The stairway was endless, but it did not tire him. Each step felt lighter than the last, as if, with every truth confessed, he'd left a piece of his burden behind. Above him, no ceiling, no sky, just a space without form, filled with a color he had no word for. And then, the stairs ended. Before him stood a single platform, round, smooth, carved from obsidian that shimmered with faint echoes of every chamber, every trial, every player who had passed through the kingdom without sound. At the center, a simple altar, and upon it, a coin, half gold, half ash. It spun slowly, as if stirred by a breath that no longer lived. Cassian stepped forward. The silence here was not oppressive. It was sacred, full, alive. A voice rose not from the air, but from inside him. The same one from the very beginning. The one that had whispered his name before he even remembered it. Cassian, you have walked through mirrors and memories, crossed bridges built from your own shame, faced silence not as punishment, but as a companion. Now the game offers you no reward, only a choice. The coin lifted gently into the air. It hovered between his hands. You may toss the coin. If it lands gold, you awaken, free. If it lands ash, you remain, and become the voice for those still walking. Or you may turn away. Let someone else toss it in your place. Cassian stared at the coin. It spun in the still air, softly, delicately. He closed his eyes and remembered them all. The boy, the woman with the soup, Thorn, the soldier who asked him to lie, the sleeping ones, the bridge of faces, his mother's touch. He opened his eyes, took the coin, and whispered with the faintest sound his voice could manage, "Let them hear me." He did not toss it. He placed it back on the altar and stepped back. The coin flared once bright and brief, then sank into the stone. And from the edges of the obsidian platform, voices began to rise. Soft, layered, a harmony of every word left unspoken. "I'm sorry. Please don't leave. I was afraid. I remember you." And at the center of it all, a final whisper, "Thank you." Cassian closed his eyes. And for the first time in the game, he slept. Not from exhaustion, but from peace. And around him silence remained. But now, it was earned. The story continues. The silence has passed. But now, the stone begins to shake. Cassian awoke beneath the earth. Not buried, not trapped, but placed. He lay on a slab of marble, smooth, ancient, cracked at the edges. Torches burned in the corners of the room. Their flames danced without heat. Above him, a ceiling carved with old symbols, gladiators, lions, temples, coins. But they were not moving in battle. They were kneeling, as if praying to something beneath them. Cassian sat up slowly. His body didn't ache, but his breath felt heavier, like the air here had waited too long to be disturbed. He stood and noticed it immediately. A symbol on his palm, burned there like a brand, a triangle within a circle, within an eye. He didn't recognize it, but it pulsed gently with each heartbeat. The room had no doors, only an opening in the floor, a spiral staircase carved directly into rock leading down. No railings, no light, just shadows that moved like they had intent. Cassian descended. As he walked, he noticed carvings in the walls, stories, but not of kings or heroes, of contestants, of men and women playing games, endless games, racing, balancing, choosing, bleeding, always observed by masks carved into the stone. At the bottom, one word etched in Latin, ludus, the game. He emerged into a vast cavern, the ceiling lost in blackness, the floor patterned with spirals and symbols. At the center, a massive stone arena, empty, silent. And in the middle of that arena, a temple, small, impossible. How could a temple be built inside the stage of blood? Cassian stepped forward. The temple shimmered, not with magic, but with memory. Its pillars were wrapped in old banners. Its doors hung open, welcoming. Inside, a single altar. Not Roman, not Greek, older, unknown, and atop it, a helmet. But not one of war. It was ceremonial, shaped like a beast. No mouth, no eyes. Just jagged lines and old symbols. He approached slowly, then noticed them, 3 robed figures, kneeling around the altar. Still, breathing barely. Each wore a faded coin on a chain. They whispered as one. "You have reached the temple beneath the arena. This is where gods watched men play, where rules were not made but remembered, where your next trial begins." The helmet lifted not by string or hand, but as if the altar itself offered it. Cassian didn't move. The voice returned this time from below the stone. To wear it is to see the game for what it is. But once worn, it cannot be removed. You may walk away, or step forward and understand. Cassian stepped forward, took the helmet, and without hesitation, placed it over his head. Darkness, then light. But not from torches, from memory, from blood, from screams that echoed not in sound, but in the bones of the stone. The temple faded. The arena awakened. And Cassian began to see. The helmet gripped Cassian's head gently, like it had been waiting for him. He could still breathe, still stand, but his vision had changed. No longer just stone and torchlight. Now, the arena around him shifted. Its dust began to glow. Its bloodstains shimmered faintly. And through it all, shapes appeared not real, but remembered. He was no longer alone. Before him stood a crowd. Rows of shadowed figures filled the arena seats, but they made no sound. They were only echoes, spectators from centuries ago. Roman nobles, warlords, foreign kings, all seated beneath a banner that read, Ludus Originis, the original game, at the center of the arena. 12 figures, barefoot, chained, blindfolded. They stood in a circle, heads bowed, and overhead, the first gamekeeper. He wore no mask, just a robe of deep crimson. He raised his hand, and with that single gesture, the first game began. Cassian stood on the edge of the sand. He wasn't really there, just watching, feeling, as if the helmet let him wear not just sight but memory. The 12 players reached out blindly. In the center of the circle, a wooden table. Upon it, 12 objects. Each player chose one. Cassian could feel their hearts pounding, confused, terrified. Then the gamekeeper spoke. His voice echoed through Cassian's mind. One of you holds the object of mercy. The rest hold tools of survival. But none of you may keep them. Choose now, who among you does not belong? The 12 froze. No one spoke. They had been told to choose, but not based on action. On instinct, Cassian's breath caught. He recognized one of them. Not by name, by feeling. A man who carried himself like Cassian. Shoulders tight, eyes scanning even while blindfolded. He didn't vote. He waited. The others began to point. Silently. One by one, toward the youngest. A boy, maybe 14, trembling, still holding a small stone. The gamekeeper lowered his hand. A blade fell from the sky, fast, silent. The boy was gone. No blood, just absence, and in that moment Cassian felt it. The game was never about chance. It was always about human nature. The scene shifted, a new trial, a narrow bridge across fire. Players crawling while unseen voices whispered their sins aloud. He lied to save himself. She killed a brother to feed a stranger. He ran while the others fell. Cassian watched, motionless. The arena pulsed with grief. This wasn't entertainment. It was a ritual. Then, one more trial. A player stepped forward, bleeding, alone, and shouted into the crowd, "Who are you to judge us? You hide behind gold and silk while we die for your sport." The crowd vanished. The arena turned to ash, and the voice in Cassian's mind whispered, "That was the last honest player." After him, masks were created. The memory ended. The arena around Cassian stilled. Dust settled. The helmet dimmed. But now in his palm he held something new. A piece of parchment, with a list of names, all crossed out, except his. And beneath his name, 2 words: Next Witness. Cassian removed the helmet. His breath was ragged. The altar before him was gone. The robed figures, gone. But the temple was still there, waiting. And behind him the stairs sealed shut. No way back. Only forward. Into the next chamber, where the game would no longer show him the past. It would ask him to rewrite it. Cassian stepped through the narrow stone passage. The torchlight flickered behind him, and ahead nothing but silence. But this silence felt different than before. It didn't press. It didn't punish. It waited. Patient, ancient. As he entered the next chamber, his breath caught. He stood at the edge of a vast circular arena, not of sand, but of marble, pale white, cracked in places, lined with hundreds of statues, all of them broken. Some were missing limbs, some faces, others slumped as if mourning. All pointed toward the center where a low stone table stood. And on that table, a mirror, cracked, framed in iron, and flickering as though it reflected more than just light. Cassian walked among the statues. Each one was unique. Each had a plaque at its base. But no names, only phrases. I waited too long. I thought I would be forgiven. I looked away when it mattered. I chose silence. And each time he read one, the mirror at the center pulsed brighter. Then a voice. Low, calm, but everywhere. These are the players who hesitated, the ones who made no move, and were claimed by time. You may not speak here. You may only choose. Cassian approached the mirror. His own reflection stared back, but fractured, blit across the broken glass. One version of him looked younger, the other older. A third wore a mask. On the table beside the mirror, 3 tokens, each carved in black stone, one a scale, one a dagger, one an empty bowl. Cassian felt the pressure return, but not to rush, to reflect. The statues were watching, not literally, but with presence. The broken head still aimed inward, still waiting for someone to choose, to do what they had not. Cassian reached forward. He touched the bowl. The chamber dimmed, and the mirror changed. Now, instead of himself, he saw a moment. A young girl crying behind a pillar. Soldiers searching for her. He remembered. He had turned away. He didn't speak up. He had told himself it wasn't his problem. That silence would protect him. But the game had remembered. So had the statue behind him, now glowing faintly. Its plaque had changed. He chose to carry hunger, not justice. Cassian stepped back. The dagger pulsed next. He touched it. The mirror changed again. A rival, bleeding. Cassian could have helped. But the game was almost won. He let him fall. The mirror cracked deeper. Cassian exhaled sharply, but he did not step back. Finally, the scale. He reached for it. And this time, the mirror stilled. Only his face. Looking back. No mask. No flames. Just him. Tired, but honest. The statues trembled softly. And one, the largest at the far side of the arena, bowed its head. Cracks spread through its chest. Then it broke open. Not violently. Like a shell revealing something alive. Inside a staircase. Leading downward. Lit by torches that had never burned before. Cassian turned once. All the statues were facing the new path. As if nodding. Approving. Forgiving. No, but accepting. He descended, carrying their regret. And his own. Because this next trial would not be about the past. It would demand a promise about the future. Cassian descended slowly. Each torch on the wall lit only as he passed, then went dark behind him. The air grew colder, thicker. He entered a narrow corridor, one that seemed carved not by tools, but by time. The walls wept. Not with water, but with ink. Old black ink trickling like tears down stone, etched with words in 100 languages. Some he recognized. Most he did not. They all said the same thing. He swore. She promised. They never returned. At the end of the passage, he entered a wide circular room. And in it, a massive stone table, rising from the center like a judge's bench. It had no chairs, no scrolls, only a quill, floating, still dripping black ink, not dry, as if waiting for him. Cassian stepped closer. The table shifted, and on its smooth surface, words began to carve themselves in. One line only. You must swear what you fear most to break. The voice returned, soft, tired, older than the game itself. We do not test you here. You test yourself. Speak an oath. One that matters. One that could be broken. One that if you fail it, the game ends. Cassian stood still. He remembered the sleeping ones, the bridge of forgotten truths, the child he did not save. He looked at the floating quill, then reached for it. The moment he touched it, his breath grew heavy, not from fear, but from weight. It was like holding the spine of a dying god. He pressed it to the stone and wrote slowly, I swear if I make it out, I will return for those left behind. The ink burned into the table. The quill faded. The voice whispered, very few choose this. Most swear to escape, or to never forget. But you promise a return. That oath is not light. It will follow you. Suddenly, a door behind the stone table opened. It did not creak. It breathed. Cassian stepped through. On the other side, a vault, filled with broken chains, shattered masks, coins split in half, relics of promises, each one marked, labeled. He swore to protect his brother. She swore to never lie again. They swore to be better next time. Each one, now dust. Cassian passed the vault in silence. He would not leave a relic here, not yet. Not unless he failed. And failure was not in his blood anymore. At the far end of the chamber, a stone pillar rose, and atop it, a key. Blackened. Simple. Heavy with time. The key bore no teeth. Only a circular mark like an eclipse. The voice spoke one last time. This does not open a door. It opens a truth. But only when you stop looking. Cassian took the key. The vault dimmed, and behind him the corridor he came from had vanished. In its place, a spiral stairway leading not down, but up, not into the arena, not into the temple, but into the space above it all, where stories are decided. Cassian climbed the spiral staircase, higher than the arena, higher than the temple's columns, into stone that no longer felt Roman, but something older, forgotten even by time itself. The key in his hand pulsed with gentle heat. Not painful, just aware. Like it knew he had questions he wasn't ready to ask. At the top of the stairs, a circular door, no handle, no lock, just an indentation the size of a coin. Cassian reached into his tunic pocket. There it was again, that old piece of parchment. The list of names. His still uncrossed. He folded it away and pressed the key into the stone. The door dissolved into smoke. And beyond it, a chamber unlike any he had seen. It was silent. Truly silent. Not a pause in sound, but the absence of the idea of sound. Cassian stepped inside. The floor was black sand, soft, cool, but each step left no mark. The walls were curved like inside a dome, and in the center stood a low table. Upon it, a single scroll, unopened, untitled, unclaimed. Beside the scroll sat a figure. Not masked, not robed, just still. A man, or something that looked like a man. Skin like faded bronze, eyes closed, hands resting on the scroll. Cassian didn't speak. He only stepped closer. The figure opened his eyes and smiled softly. "You found it." Cassian said nothing. "This," the man continued, gesturing to the scroll, "is the match that was never played. It was designed long ago, a test so cruel even the early gamekeepers refused to host it. So it was sealed, waiting for someone who might understand it." Cassian stared at the scroll. It was wrapped in red thread. At the knot, a symbol, scales, cracked in half. "What kind of test is it?" Cassian finally asked. The man blinked slowly. "You're not here to play it. You're here to decide if it should be played. And once you decide, the game will remember. Forever." Cassian's mind raced. He had seen what the games could do. How they broke people, turned choices into punishment, made silence into strategy. But this, to choose whether a game should exist at all, that was something else. He stepped closer to the scroll. Its thread twitched slightly, not with wind, with breath. It was alive, waiting to be born, waiting for permission. Cassian turned to the man. "What happens if I say yes?" "Then the scroll will open," the man said. "The trial will begin. You will not play it, but others will, someday. And if I say no? Then the scroll is burned. Its design forgotten forever. The game loses a piece of itself." Cassian hesitated, then whispered, "Can I know what the trial is, before I decide?" The man nodded. He raised one hand, touched the scroll, and Cassian saw a circle of 10 strangers, each holding a vial. They must choose who drinks, daki, who throws theirs away, and who refills the others. If one lies, they all die. If one speaks truth, they all suffer. If no one chooses, a child dies instead. Cassian gasped. His hand trembled. He stepped back from the scroll. "It's not a trial. It's cruelty wrapped in logic." The man smiled again. "And that, Cassian, is why you're here." Without another word, Cassian reached down, lifted the scroll, held it for a moment, then placed it into the small brazier beside the table and set it alight. The flame rose with no heat. The scroll crumbled to ash, and in that moment, the entire chamber breathed. Relieved, the man bowed his head. The game forgets. Because of you. Go. The chamber dimmed. The door reopened, and beyond it a golden path of soft sand. One more chamber. One final voice, where everything would end, or begin again. Cassian stepped onto the golden sand. It wasn't true gold. It was dust, ancient, powdered from 1,000 masks crushed by time. The light in this corridor came from nowhere and everywhere, soft, weightless. It touched nothing, yet it lit the way. Ahead stood a door. No carvings, no symbols, just wood, old, splintering at the edges. He reached for it, but before his fingers touched it, it opened. Inside, a quiet chamber. Walls of smooth obsidian. No torches, no thrones. Just a circle of 7 chairs, all empty. And in the center, a mirror, not cracked, not glowing, perfect. Still, waiting. Cassian entered slowly. The door closed behind him. The silence here was warm, welcoming. No whispers, no pressure, only space and time. Then a voice, not from above, not within, from the mirror itself. Remove your name. Cassian blinked. What? Remove it, the voice said gently. If you no longer wish to be part of the game, your name must return to dust. The parchment appeared in his hand again. The list. All names crossed out. Except one. Cassian. He stared at it. Then, without trembling, he drew a line through it. The parchment disintegrated. A breeze passed through the chamber from nowhere, and the mirror rippled. Cassian stepped closer, and saw not himself, but the first mask, smooth, expressionless, carved of bone. The voice spoke again. You now have no name, no past, no face. Only one choice remains. A final chair appeared behind him. Not carved, not grand, just empty, waiting. You may sit, the voice said, and take the burden of the game to protect it, or to end it. Or you may walk away. Forget everything. Sleep. Return to a world where no one remembers what was beneath the arena. Cassian said nothing. His hand hovered between the mirror and the chair. He had learned the rules. He had bent them. Carried guilt. Felt weight no other player had known. But now he could shape the game. Or erase it. He stepped toward the chair, paused, then turned, faced the mirror, and whispered, "Let no one carry this again." The chamber dimmed. The chairs vanished. The mirror split into dust. And the floor beneath Cassian crumbled. He didn't fall. He floated, down, down, back through every chamber, every stair, every game, every face, until he woke, in his own bed, the sun just rising. His hands scarred with symbols that had never existed. No helmet, no mask, no arena. Only one thing remained, the coin, half gold, half ash, resting on his pillow, still spinning, others of a citizen. No one would know what he had seen. No one could. He stepped into the sunlight, and Rome greeted him like an old friend who had no idea where he'd been. But not everything was the same. Not quite. He walked to the market. Streets buzzed as always. Bakers shouting. Merchants haggling. Children running through dust. But every so often, he caught eyes. People watching him a second too long. Turning away when he looked back. Some with curiosity, others with recognition. At the bread stall, a woman handed him a loaf. Her hand trembled, her eyes wide. You returned," she whispered. He froze. "You remember me?" he asked softly. She only nodded. "We were in the corridor, the one with lights. You helped me walk." Cassian swallowed. "You made it out?" She shook her head. "No," and walked away. That night, Cassian wandered the upper district, past marble columns, past laughing nobles, past a statue of a former emperor whose eyes seemed to follow him. Then, in the shadow of a closed temple, he saw them. 3 figures. No masks, no robes, just stillness. Each with a coin pressed to their palm, each standing exactly where the shadows met the torchlight. They didn't move, didn't blink, just observed. Cassian stepped closer. The coin in his pocket grew warm. The tallest figure finally spoke. A whisper. "You changed the game. Now the game watches back." Cassian stepped back. But the shadows didn't follow. They stayed, as if bound to the edge of something he had only begun to see. That night, Cassian returned home. The coin sat once again on his table. Still half gold, still half ash, but now beneath it, a new note had appeared. 4 words written in deep red ink. They were never gone. Cassian didn't sleep that night. Not truly. He lay still, eyes half closed, but his breath never found rhythm. The coin pulsed softly on his table, as if whispering, "You are not done." By morning he was already walking. No breakfast, no cloak. Just the parchment in his pocket, and the new note beneath the coin. They were never gone. He returned to the temple district, not to pray, but to find the library. The Curia Arcanum, a place most citizens passed without notice. It wasn't grand. It had no domes, just a low roof and quiet windows covered in ivy and dust. But inside were records, scrolls, accounts from the forgotten sides of history. Cassian entered. A single scribe looked up, eyes like glass, skin pale with ink stains. "I seek records," Cassian said. "What kind?" the scribe asked flatly. Cassian hesitated, then said, "People who disappeared." The scribe blinked once, then nodded. He was led to a side room. No torches, only candlelight, like memory flickering against time. The scrolls here were not filed by date, but by last known action. Cassian ran his finger across the labels. Chose silence. Refused coin. Vanished mid-trial. Became watcher. Erased. He stopped. Became watcher. He opened the scroll. Inside, drawings. Not faces but symbols. Masks. Some familiar. Some warped. Cracked. Unfinished. Each had a note beneath it. And a name. But they weren't real names. They were fragments. The one who chose hunger. The last truth speaker. He who sat down first. The girl who refused the final door. Cassian's eyes widened. That last one. He remembered her. She had stood beside him in the mirror chamber. She had vanished when he turned. He flipped the scroll to the final page. There, a symbol he'd never seen. It wasn't a mask. It was a mirror cracked in 6 places. And underneath, Cassian. No title, no note. Just his name. He dropped the scroll. The scribe was gone. The room felt heavier, and in the silence a new voice emerged, not spoken. Written. A message began to carve itself into the table with no hand guiding it. You saw them. You made the choice. Now the choice watches back. Cassian stepped out into the daylight. But the sun no longer felt warm. Every alley seemed to flicker with a face he half recognized. Every laugh in the market rang hollow. Every coin sounded like a heartbeat hitting stone. That night the coin on his table was gone, and in its place, a new object. A mask, half ash, half gold. No eyes, no mouth, just stillness. And underneath a final whisper written in coal. You already wore it once. The mask sat on Cassian's table. Half ash, half gold. It looked fragile, but heavy, like it had survived more history than the empire outside his door. He didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, he waited. Let the room breathe. Let the shadows stretch. He knew something now. Whatever had started beneath the arena, it didn't end there. It never had. The game had always leaked out. Into the streets. The forums. The people who watched and whispered and forgot to look away. And somewhere in the city was the place where it began. Not the arena, not the temple. The house without doors. He'd heard the phrase only once before. From a street painter. Old. Blind in one eye. He had spoken in riddles while painting a cracked statue. Some houses keep people out. Some keep truth in. But one house lets only the memory leave. Cassian thought it was poetry. Until now. He walked for hours that night. Past temples, down alleys, under arches no one remembered building. Until finally, his feet stopped. In front of a low stone building. No windows. No carvings. No door. Just a wall sealed in smooth white clay. And in the center, the same symbol from the scroll. A mirror, cracked in 6 places. Cassian stepped forward, touched it, and the wall dissolved into dust like breath on cold glass. He stepped inside. No torches, no floors, just void. But not empty. It was filled with the sense of what had been. Chairs, desks, ink, scrolls, but all made of light memories frozen in their last moment. He walked through flickering ghosts. Some sat writing. Some watched a flame that no longer burned. Some simply stared at the center of the room where nothing stood. Yet all of them wore masks, some simple, some ornate, all silent. A single chair flickered near him, and for a breathless second he saw himself in it. Mask on. Hands folded. Watching. Cassian turned. A staircase now spiraled down from nowhere. He followed it, not by command, but by understanding. At the bottom, a stone room, circular. And in the middle, 7 masks, laid in a perfect ring. One empty space. Where the 8th should be. The mask from his home was now in his hand. He hadn't picked it up. But it had come anyway, as if it had always been his. He knelt, held the mask over the final space, but did not place it. Not yet. Instead, he whispered, "What is this place?" The room replied, not in words, but in a memory. He saw a group of watchers, before the first games, creating rules, writing names, arguing. Some cried, some laughed, but all agreed, the world will always play. Better to give it rules. Better to control the game than pretend it doesn't exist. Cassian opened his eyes. The memory faded. The room was still. Waiting. He placed the mask in the final space, and the ground opened. Not with force, but with surrender. As if something buried for centuries was finally ready to rise. The ground beneath Cassian gave way, but he did not fall. He drifted, weightless, like sinking into the surface of a still pond, that had been undisturbed for centuries. The darkness wasn't cold. It felt like pages turning. Soft, endless, full of breath but not life. Then his feet touched stone, solid, warm, and humming. A narrow tunnel stretched forward, lit by amber light. But there were no torches. The light came from the walls. Thousands of small glowing plates embedded into the stone, each one etched with a single name. Cassian walked, and as he did, each name he passed whispered softly into the air. Barely audible, barely real. Laelia, Quintus, Selene, Timaeus. Names he had never heard, yet they echoed like old friends. He reached a fork in the tunnel. To the left, a wall that pulsed with blue light. To the right, a wall that pulsed with red. Above them, an inscription in broken Latin. Those who played, those who refused. Cassian turned toward the red. The path narrowed, tighter, colder. The whispers here were louder, harsher, not mournful but defiant. I said no. They took my brother instead. I refused the coin. They called me coward, and still I lived. The red walls glowed brighter, until he reached a round chamber. Inside, stone chairs, dozens of them, empty but marked, each with a small coin embedded in the backrest. Cracked and checked, some melted completely. And at the center, a table. Upon it a scroll untouched by dust. Cassian unrolled it. No names, just numbers, each crossed out. Except for one. Player 0. No description. No age, no origin. Just one note beneath. The one who refused but stayed. Cassian blinked. Suddenly the chairs behind him were no longer empty. Figures sat in them. Not alive, not dead. Just present. Watching. Then one spoke. Soft. Female. Old. He built the game, not to play it, but to end it. And when it grew beyond him, he disappeared here. Another voice. Younger. He was the first mask that was never worn. The first name removed before the game began. Cassian looked down at the scroll. The number 0 pulsed once, and then stopped. The chamber dimmed, and a new inscription carved itself into the wall behind the chairs. To forget the player is to remember the game. To remember the player is to change it. The path forward opened, not down, but up. A staircase spiraling into soft white stone. At the top, waited the one who remembered all the names, even the ones erased. Cassian climbed the pale stone staircase. The light here was unnatural, not bright, but weightless, like the air before dawn, not yet promised to any day. His steps made no sound. His breath slowed. Even his thoughts began to echo more softly, as if this place required less of him, or more. The stairway ended at a circular chamber. Small, modest, but complete. It felt finished, like the final page of a story. No symbols, no gold, just silence. And in the center, a single figure seated cross-legged on a raised slab of stone. Cloaked in grey, head bowed, breathing steady. Cassian stepped forward. The slab bore an inscription in tiny looping script. The Whisperer. The first rule reader. The last rule breaker. The figure did not move. Cassian waited. And then the figure spoke. Not aloud. Into Cassian's thoughts. You've come far. Farther than any were meant to. Cassian answered in his mind. What is this place? The summit, the voice replied. The place no player was meant to see. But you're no longer just a player, are you? Cassian said nothing. The voice continued. I whisper the rules before they are written. Not to guide them, but to warn them. I am the last who remembers why the game began. Cassian felt the air grow heavier. Not oppressive, deep. So why did it begin? The Whisperer raised his head slightly, but not enough to show a face, because Rome was already playing. They starved the poor, amused the rich, gave blood to the crowd in the name of peace. The games didn't invent cruelty. They contained it, until they didn't. Cassian stepped closer. Can they end? Games never end, said the voice. Only rules change. Only players forget. Cassian stared down at the Whisperer. Then what am I? The chamber grew still. You are the first question, the voice said. The one that made others remember. You changed nothing yet, but you reminded the game that it could change. Silence. Then for the first time the Whisperer lifted his head, still cloaked, but Cassian saw a glimmer. Not a face, not eyes, just a mirror. Cracked, reflecting only Cassian himself. Take the final breath, said the Whisperer, then climb once more. Not into Rome, but into what watches Rome. Cassian stepped back. The floor beneath him began to ascend. No stairs, no door. He was being lifted. Through smoke, through time, into the final veil. Above the forum, above the watchers, above the game itself. The light grew thinner as Cassian rose, not darker, not colder, just less real. As if the world around him were becoming thought instead of place. He stood still, until his feet gently touched solid ground. And when he looked up, he was no longer in Rome. Not in the temple, not in the underground, not even in the air above the arena. He stood in a void of golden ash. The wind moved in slow circles. Time breathed once every minute. And ahead of him was a throne. But not a grand one. It wasn't built for power. It wasn't draped in silk or guarded by beasts. It was simple. Stone, worn by weight that hadn't rested in centuries, above it carved into the sky itself. The seat with no player. Cassian stepped closer. The air around the throne shimmered, not with heat, with questions. He saw visions swirling beside it. The child he failed. The woman he helped. The scroll he burned. The players he saw. The names he never knew. And in the middle of all of it, himself. But older, tired, alone, watching others play. While he made the rules, a soft voice echoed behind him. Not the Whisperer, not God, just a voice. If you sit, the game becomes yours. You cannot undo its past. You can only decide its future. Cassian turned. No one there. Just air. Just space. Just choice. He looked at the throne again. Its surface was cracked, but strong. It didn't ask for him. It only waited. In his hand the coin appeared once more. Half gold, half ash, but this time a thin line of light pulsed between the two halves, joining them, balancing them. Cassian closed his hand around it. Then slowly he stepped past the throne and kept walking. Not out of fear, but truth. Because some seats are not meant to be filled. Some power is safest when it remains waiting. Some games are only games if someone agrees to play. And Cassian, he chose to remember, to carry the game in silence, not as ruler, not as rebel, but as witness. The ash wind circled once. The throne dimmed, and Cassian walked forward into the next part of the world, where no watchers waited, only the weight of what he now knew. Let's walk forward, into a world where silence echoes with memory, and where Cassian learns the greatest truth of all. Cassian opened his eyes. Not suddenly. Not gasping. Just gently. Like someone waking from a dream they weren't supposed to remember. The sun above Rome was soft today, muted behind clouds. The wind whispered, but said nothing clear. And yet, Cassian felt the weight of something still around him. Not danger, not burden, just presence. He stood in the forum, alive, unnoticed, as if nothing had happened, as if the games, the masks, the coin were dreams caught in his cloak. But then he saw it. A boy, no older than 10, standing beside a fountain, holding a small scroll with a red thread, just staring at it, not opening, not running, waiting. Cassian approached. "Where did you get that?" The boy looked up, eyes calm. "It was on my doorstep. Said it had my name." Cassian knelt beside him. "And did it?" The boy nodded. "But not the one people call me. The one only I know." Cassian felt the air shift. He reached into his pocket. The coin was gone. But in its place, a seed, small, smooth, half gold, half ash. It pulsed once in his palm, then stilled. Cassian looked up at the boy again. "You don't have to open it." The boy thought for a moment, then held it out to Cassian. "You can keep it." Cassian gently took the scroll and placed it on the fountain edge, unopened. The boy smiled, then ran off. Not scared, not confused, just free. Cassian sat down beside the scroll, and for the first time in a long while, he exhaled. The game was still here. It always would be. But today, it didn't play. It waited. And sometimes that was enough. That night, the wind in Cassian's chambers shifted. It didn't howl. It murmured, as if the city itself had started speaking again, but only in pieces. He rose from his bed and lit a single oil lamp. The seed on his desk had grown slightly darker. Still, still waiting, but not silent. A knock came at the door. 3 soft taps. And when Cassian opened it, no one was there. Just a scrap of parchment folded in half, tucked into the frame. No wax. No seal. But the moment he touched it, he remembered. It was a symbol. Not drawn, burned into the page. A circle, broken by a single diagonal line, like an unfinished coin. Or a wound. Cassian knew it. He had seen it once before. In the vault of forgotten players, and beneath the symbol, a name. Player 1. Just that. No message. No direction. But it was enough. He left the house before dawn. The city was grey-blue and silent. Not even the vendors stirred. Cassian walked to the ancient forum, but not the public one. He went to the old court, where trials had once been held before Rome had even become itself. And there, scratched beneath the stone steps, was the same symbol. Fresh. Player 1. The first. The one who refused the game, but shaped it anyway. The one they said disappeared. Erased. But now, returning, Cassian touched the stone. And suddenly a voice cracked through his thoughts. "Why did you choose to walk away?" He turned. No one there. But the voice remained. Familiar. Almost his own. But older. "You think the seat stays empty just because you did not fill it. The game does not wait. It remembers." A shadow passed across the sky. Not a bird, not a cloud, a shape. Fast, then gone. Cassian stepped back and felt something slide beneath his sandal. He looked down, a single coin. But unlike his own, this one was whole. No ishit, no split. just a perfect gleaming disk of gold. On one side, eye, on the other, a mirror. Cassian picked it up. It burned, but not his skin. His memory. He saw flashes, a young man in rags, sitting in a ring of elders, refusing the game, then watching it grow, silently, carefully, and when they offered him the throne, he whispered, and the world changed. Cassian clutched the coin. The voice returned, "You are not the first, and you will not be the last." The game had never been faceless. It had simply changed faces too many times to be seen clearly. But now, Cassian had a new path. Not down, not up, but sideways, into the spaces between the stories, where the first player waited and watched. The coin glowed faintly in Cassian's palm. Whole, gold, unearthly, yet heavy, like it had absorbed the weight of centuries. And beneath his feet, at the edge of the old court steps, the stone cracked softly. A spiral began to carve itself into the earth, a path opening that had always been there, but never been seen. Cassian stepped inside. There were no torches, no stairs, only air, thick with names. The corridor narrowed, but not with walls, with voices. Each one whispered a name, not aloud, but just outside the edge of hearing. Names that had been shouted, erased, then whispered again in secret. Cassian paused as he passed an archway. On its side was an inscription, carved with no tool. Here lie the broken. Not the defeated, not the erased. The ones who played and were never remembered. He entered. The room inside was round, a dome of dark marble veined with silver threads. No shelves, no scrolls, only air. But suspended in that air were hundreds of name fragments, letters, half-names, symbols that once stood for lives, all floating in slow circles, like dust in amber. Cassian stepped closer. The fragments moved with him, not afraid, not welcoming, just curious. A piece passed his shoulder, Tavius. Another drifted overhead, L. Then one more, smaller but glowing faintly. I, just a single character. But it pulsed the way the gold coin had. He held the coin out. And in response, all the name fragments turned inward, toward a space in the center of the dome. And from that space, a figure formed. Not flesh, not shadow, but reflection. Cassian saw himself, and then not himself, a younger version. Older, then neither. Just a possibility. The voice returned, the same one from the steps. You cannot know the first player's name, but you can see what he became. A player who lost nothing, because he risked nothing, and still he paid the price. Cassian watched the figure shift again. Now it wore a mask, half-formed, cracked but never placed on a face, and then the voice whispered once more. He watches the game not to control it, but to remind it of what it forgot. You. Cassian felt his knees grow weak. He had come searching for the beginning, but found something worse, a warning, that no name, once spoken, ever truly disappears, even when broken, even when denied. They remain, until someone remembers. And now, the broken names were remembering him. Cassian turned. The way behind him was gone. But a new door stood ahead, not carved, just open. Waiting? He walked forward, and every fragment of every forgotten player followed him, like wind in his footsteps. Now let us step into the inner sanctum, where threads are tied, and the game breathes. Without ever speaking, Cassian crossed the threshold. Behind him, silence. Ahead, stillness. No echo followed his steps now. as if the space he entered had no past, only function. The corridor narrowed to a single hallway. Its walls were smooth, white, carved not with symbols, but with paths. Thin golden lines stretched across the stone, interweaving like a massive web. A map, but not of streets or cities, a map of choices, left or right, take or give, play or refuse, watch or act, survive or sacrifice, thousands, maybe millions. At the end of the hall sat a chair. Not grand, not even shaped for comfort, just a seat. Wooden, plain. And in it sat a figure, shrouded in grey and green, motionless, as though they had been carved from time itself. They did not look up when Cassian entered. But Cassian knew. This was no watcher, no whisperer. This was the gamekeeper. "You have come far," said the figure, voice gentle like parchment sliding over stone. "Few remember this path even exists." Cassian stepped forward. "You keep it alive, even now?" "I keep it from dying the wrong way," said the gamekeeper. "The game must rest, but it must not be forgotten." Cassian looked around. The golden lines on the wall shifted gently, as if breathing. "Why continue at all?" "Because forgetting is worse," the gamekeeper replied. "If the world forgets the game, it creates new ones, crueler, without rules, without end." The gamekeeper finally looked up. Not with eyes, but with presence. Cassian felt himself being seen completely. Not judged, not tested, understood. "You were never meant to end it," the voice continued. "You were meant to hold the memory, to remind them that even cruelty has a shape, and shape can be resisted." Cassian said nothing. He stepped beside the chair, the map of choices shimmered, and a new thread appeared. Just one, small, thin, but golden. It led away. Not forward, not backward, just away. "What happens if I follow it?" he asked. "Then you become what I was," the gamekeeper said softly. "Not ruler, not master, not player. Just keeper." Cassian reached toward the thread, but paused. The gamekeeper rose for the first time. And in their place, the chair did not remain empty. It vanished, like it had been passed on, without being taken. "The game never ends," the voice echoed once more, "but it can be remembered differently." Cassian nodded, turned to the thread, and walked. Behind him the golden map faded, and with it, the final layer of the game's heart. The golden thread wound forward, with no walls beside it, no ceiling above, no floor below. Just Cassian, walking, in a space that was less place and more thought. As he moved, the thread responded. It pulsed faintly with each step, like it was asking a question. And every answer came not in words, but in will. Then, in the distance, a figure. Not cloaked, not masked, just human. Sitting cross-legged on a raised circle of stone, suspended in air. And beside him, 3 objects. A bowl, a flame, and a mirror. Cassian approached slowly. The man did not speak. He simply pointed at the mirror. And in it, Cassian saw not his reflection, but his path, every choice, every name he remembered, every name he forgot, every player, every whisper, every watcher, and at the center, the game, still, sleeping, waiting. "Is this the end?" Cassian asked. The man finally spoke, softly, as though the words had waited lifetimes. "It's the place where ends are decided." He gestured to the 3 objects. One burns it. One washes it. One carries it. Cassian understood. The flame would erase the game. Burn the memories, the names, the choices. It would be gone, and the world would forget it ever existed. Even him. The bowl would drown it. Wash it away quietly. Not erased but numbed, reduced to myth. A story children tell. A lesson in a scroll. And the mirror would keep it alive. Not as a game to be played, but as a memory to be passed. Cassian stood before them all, and for a long time he said nothing. The thread coiled at his feet, waiting, not pushing, just offering. He closed his eyes and placed his hand not on the flame, not on the bowl, but gently on the mirror. The reflection changed. The game as it once was, cruel, vast, secret, melted away. And in its place came stories, not rules, not punishments. Stories of choice, of courage, of memory. And at the center, Cassian, not a player, not a watcher, not a ruler, a storyteller. The man nodded once, then faded. So did the flame. And the bowl. Only the mirror remained in Cassian's hand, warm, balanced, quiet. He turned, and the thread behind him began to unwind, unspool itself into the world once more, not as a trap, but as a trail for others. Let's walk the final stretch, not with urgency, but with peace, for the story has chosen its ending. And Cassian is no longer playing, he is remembering. Then let us walk the final stretch, not with urgency, but with peace, for the story has chosen its ending. And Cassian is no longer playing, he is remembering. Cassian emerged before dawn. The sky above Rome was silver blue. No trumpets, no watchers, no signs in the sky. Just light, soft, kind, like the world had not forgotten him. It had simply waited. The mirror was warm in his hand. It no longer showed faces or pasts. Now it simply glowed, like a lantern for the soul. He walked through empty streets, past closed stalls, past the steps where his journey began. And everywhere, he heard no whispers, but silence. And in that silence, rest. Cassian stopped at the foot of a small hill, one where children often played. He climbed it slowly, and when he reached the top, he sat beneath an olive tree, took the mirror, and placed it in the soil. No ceremony, no words, just the quiet. And the wind. The mirror sank gently, and from the earth, a soft sprout bloomed. Its leaves shimmered, gold on one side, ash on the other. Balanced, alive, Cassian smiled, not because he won, not because it was over, but because it had become something new. Later that day, a girl with dirt on her hands and questions in her eyes would find the sprout. She would touch its leaves, feel a pulse, and dream of masks, and choices, and players. And when she awoke, she'd tell her little brother a story. Of a game, of a man who walked away, of a world that didn't forget, it just slept. And far away, under a sky no one watched, Cassian closed his eyes, and finally, slept. Hey, sleepyhead, if you're still with us, thank you for wandering through time, where games were more than games, and stories could change the world. This is the vintage game of sleep, where even history dreams. May your night be quiet, your thoughts soft, and your dreams full of stories worth remembering. Until next time, sleep well.